First play of the game, we're going blind pig.
We're going to go blind pig.
Blind pig, yeah.
So I'm also a big fan of the blind pig.
Hello and welcome to the Blind Pig podcast. It's been an abysmal week for Super League basketball predictions, but a fantastic week for British basketball as a whole, with action up and down the country. Today's topics have been chosen by you. We asked on Instagram and you guys came through with the topics that you wanted to hear about and the things you wanted us to discuss. We're going to run through all of the fan questions and give you the answers that you need. First question, what did you think of NBA London? And after seeing it, does NBA Europe feel more realistic? Well, the NBA was back in London for the first time after 7 years, and we were treated to amazing atmosphere, highlights, and absolute buzz all weekend. There's no doubt that the NBA is a spectacle, and people up and down the country were flocking to take it in. Now, I personally didn't attend all the events, but I think it speaks volume that just the clips and the pictures, the buzz and the atmosphere that it's created, and just how impressive this weekend was. Even before the game itself, the events for people to attend seemed absolutely top tier. NBA House, the tag team one-on-one, despite it being a 14-0 skunk, and just, regular people being exciting about hoops and wanting to post about it on their social media is absolutely amazing. It's also really telling that Ja Morant chose to play in this game and not the game in Berlin. Regardless of what's happening right now with the trade rumours, his relationship with the front office, and definitely his relationship with head coach Thomas Isolo, it was clear, despite the rumours, Ja played hard and he showed how dynamic he can be in games and the difference maker that he can be in this Grizzly offence. Legitimately, sometimes just because we're Brits, we don't share too much about ourselves, you forget just how many people follow the NBA and enjoy basketball. And that's a positive sign for British basketball as a whole. This weekend, though, also highlighted the potential pitfalls and hurdles that an NBA Europe model is going to come up against. Despite it being the first event in 7 years and the commentary team constantly telling me it was a sellout crowd, there were no seats left in the arena, my eyes told me that was not true. And to be fair, it was a lot of the empty seats down in the lower bowls that hadn't been bought, but I think it shows that there's a ceiling on what Brits are willing to pay even for the NBA. And that has to be factored in carefully. Obviously, this game drew people in from across the country. It's a Sunday afternoon game. A potential midweek game in London or Manchester is going to be really more difficult to try and fill, especially if people aren't travelling from the Midlands or the North every week to support an NBA Europe team in London. I think, it was really bolstered by stars embracing the event and getting celebrities to be there and endorse it and to make it seem cool. Although there were some really cringe moments.
Is this like VAR?
Oh, here we go. Jar spam.
Jar spam.
Why do they wipe their hands on their feet so much?
Yeah, I know.
I can't believe that he genuinely thought they were wiping their hands with their shoes. But hey, if a kid likes it, and because of that he goes and picks up a basketball, that is a win for me. News also was breaking all week about NBA Europe, and just some key points. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver obviously came under a fair bit of flack for calling the new league a form of sports media, with critics drawing comparisons to the WWE. Personally, I didn't hate the comparison. I think the wording was definitely poor, but the general idea that sports is competing not just with other sports, but with entertainment forms, that felt accurate to me. Obviously, we have people who are choosing now, do I watch basketball or do I watch Stranger Things on Netflix? Am I going to go to the cinema with my family or am I going to go to the game? That is a real choice that people are being torn in between, especially with money being tighter and people wanting more bang for their buck. I land firmly on the side that live sports has the potential to be the most dramatic thing that anyone will experience and is always more worthwhile. Continuing on from NBA London event, there has also been a closed-door meeting for select investors to hear more about NBA Europe, with a lot of the targets being owners and wealthy investors, many of whom already have ties to pre-existing football clubs. However, the BBC is now reporting that neither Man City or Man United, the two franchises strongly linked to the Manchester NBA Europe franchise, and of course the Co-op Live Arena, the BBC is reporting that neither team is interested in joining the NBA Europe project, although this might be just a smokescreen to really try and deflect attention away. Quite honestly, people are divided about NBA Europe. The basketball club Barcelona has just re-upped their contract with EuroLeague for another 10 years. Real Madrid had a special visit from Adam Silver alongside Pau Gasol, NBA legend and all-star champion, to try and sweeten the deal. And a raft of EuroLeague teams have met with Adam Silver to talk about the potential of NBA Europe and what it means. Let's talk though about the elephant in the room with NBA Europe. The buy-in for franchise is rumoured to be at least 500 million. And the types of people that have access to that money are really, really small. And we keep hearing about these sovereign wealth funds. And often this is tied to the Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth fund, PIF. And lots of sports critics have called out Saudi Arabia for what they're doing as a form of sports washing, redirecting the conversation away from their stance on basic human rights and women's rights towards global sports and trying to change the narrative away from some horrific things that have happened into sports media. Now, we're not a political podcast, but equally it is part of the conversation. The NBA obviously does loads of good for the community. It's a big economic driver, but it's also a for-profit organisation. And the potential expansion into Europe is deliberate, and it's not just, let's just spread the joy of basketball for the fun of it. For British basketball, this comes with loads of opportunities in terms of investment and sparking what could be a real wildfire of excitement and activity and basketball opportunity. I grow more and more worried every time I hear about this, about what it means for the domestic professional league here in the UK. Specifically, if the NBA franchises don't partner with or buy out the London Lions and MCR Basketball, how on earth are those teams going to compete with the power, the wealth and the freshness that an NBA Europe will bring? And this links really nicely to the second fan question that we got. What do you think needs to be done to grow the fan base and expand the league? Well, post-NBA London, teams have to capitalise on the extra excitement and buzz from the NBA, and we have to do it right now. It's a great time to offer people who are NBA-only fans a great live experience to watch basketball, or even just to follow a basketball league that operates in their time zone. I would expect a real marketing push and drive from this point from Super League basketball, especially at this point in the season where things are about to ramp up. We have the first trophy final coming up, and it could be a real turning point to help people transition from being an NBA-only fan to being an NBA fan and a fan of British basketball. Secondly, for me, if we want to grow the fan base and we want the league to expand, we need to learn from what the NBA does so well. And legitimately, this year, the NBA, they could have sent anyone over, because on every NBA team, there are star players and there are people with stories, and people feel connected to those people's stories. Desmond Bain coming back to play against his former team in Memphis. Mo and Franz Wagner, playing back in Germany for the first time in front of their parents. Or even if it was Ja Morant beefing with their team. People understand storylines, and the NBA doesn't shy away from showing people those storylines and really trying to sell and market them. In the SLB, I personally feel that's been lacking this season. Literally, we're about to have the SLB Cup quarter-finals, and it is going to be a rerun of every playoff matchup last season. A great example, right, a storyline, Surrey. Surrey beat Leicester in the semi-finals of the SLB Cup in order to progress. Leicester come back in the playoffs and beat Surrey. There is a huge and easy story to be able to tell there. There should be clips of, just flooding the internet of these two teams going back and forth, trying to hype up a matchup this Friday night. But those clips are absent. And I get it, it's harder because there's so much more turnover in our league compared to the NBA. But by now, you know who your stars are and you know who your colourful personalities are that are going to say something that might not be perfect, but sparks a bit of rivalry and a bit of interest and intrigue. It might not be the most family-friendly thing, but if I was in the SLB media team, I'd be clipping up Ben Thomas pushing Rob Paternostro and using that at every single moment I could. I mean, all that stuff, man, it can be used to build games, to build excitement, and to drive demand in ticket sales. And right now, the demand is really lacking. There's no incentive for someone to buy a season ticket, particularly, or to buy tickets majorly in advance. because pretty much for every franchise in every game, on the day, I could go and choose a quality seat that's available at a good price. We just don't have the demand driving people to be proactive in buying tickets and building buzz. Talking about expansion, the other element that I think is really interesting, and I would love to hear more from the SLB about this, is just understanding what the barriers to entry are for new teams. Great work happened to highlight what would need to happen in order to build a 5,000-seater stadium in West Yorkshire. And one of the things that came out of the sustainability report that was really critical is actually that there was a stipulation that a new franchise should have a 5,000-seater stadium if the population density was high enough. Now, that would be the largest SLB arena, bar the Copper Box, if someone came in and built a 5,000-seater stadium. And for the most part, our current smaller Super League basketball franchises aren't selling out consistently. So the likelihood of a new franchise coming in, having to build a 5,000-seater stadium, and then immediately having to fill that from day one is relatively low. Plus, it's additional cost for people, and the investment is just a lot. How much does that deter people away from wanting to invest in the SLB? The next question, I saw you at the Lions game. Are they as good in person? Honestly, they're better. Like, genuinely. Like, I jab and I poke at the London Lions sometimes, but they are legit. And Coach Sabonis has everyone bought in and playing a system. And that's the overarching thing that I saw on Sunday as the Lions beat Sheffield. It's a commitment to a philosophy. You see that in Cheshire on the offensive end, where Ben has got his people really bought into this idea of it's a three-point shot or it's at the rim for a high percentage look. But it was different with London, man. It was on both ends of the court, and really just across the board, people were bought in. The third quarter is their absolute calling card. They went into the half down 7 points, and they came out in the third. They turned the defensive screws on Sheffield and beat them 30-14 in the third quarter. That is the only quarter that the London Lions won the whole game, and it was enough to give them the win. Chaundy Brown Jr. is legit, man. Like, I had questions about him from the Euro Cup game, but after seeing him in person, I have no more questions about his defensive ability, about his grit, about his tenacity, and the dude is a tough shot maker, and he does it like so chilled. There's a crazy play in the third quarter where he goes and he bumps Jordan Routinho and steps back for a mid-range two, calm as you like. The guy's just a weapon. And if Nigel Hawkins can get his shot going, you know, even to like the same extent that like Chase and Randall had it going, that's just another weapon for the Lions to stretch the floor and really being able to open up the driving lanes and for their bigs inside. We were able to talk to a lot of people on the London Lions staff about injuries, and we can provide some exclusive updates on their players. Firstly, Mo Solowade is almost back to full fitness. The Lions expect him to play before the start of February. Joel Scott, who is obviously out for 12 weeks, is still on track and recovering and is looking to still make a return in March. People were a lot less committal, though, about Cameron McGusty's timeline. They only commented to me that his cast is still on. Ethan Price suffered a rolled ankle, and there's no timetable yet for his return, but there didn't seem to be a level of concern, at least to the people that I spoke to, about his ability to come back healthy and contributing. The same is true with Lukashunas. His shoulder seems to be a lingering issue, a nagging issue, and not one that's stopping him from playing, but coach is leaning towards resting him and saving the shoulder from in-game wear and tear. But the crazy stuff is, this team is doing all of its damage, even with pieces missing. This week, Chase and Randall left the London Lions, and I wasn't as concerned as other people about the Lions choosing to move on from Chase and Randall. Obviously, when he was announced, it was announced that he was on a short-term contract, and from the limited people that I've spoken to in the Lions organisations, he was looking for a change as much as the Lions were themselves. There was a natural point where an extension was either going to be reached or not, and ultimately they decided to move forward with different players, and that just felt like the more attractive option to them, particularly with the injury to Joel Scott. They just needed a different type of player. And in the midst of all of their injuries, what a ray of sunshine has Dean Williams been holding down the middle. And if he's going to shoot 3 for 5 from 3, then he literally has no gap in his game. And I even thought Dean's comments post-game, which you can see on our Instagram, were also a real shine of maturity and how measured he is practically. I tried to feed him a bit of a leading question to see if he would nibble on a Newcastle comment, but he just showed in his responses just how seriously he takes the Newcastle Eagles. Obviously not far away from the trophy final, big match up against Newcastle. How confident are you, knowing that you absolutely smashed them just a couple of weeks ago?
We try not to think about previous games. We just try to look forward and focus on the task at hand on the day. So they'll probably be a completely different team when we play them again. We know what their players are capable of as a team. We know they got talented players, talented coaching staff. So yeah, they're going to come ready to play. So we'll just have to do the same.
I'm really looking forward to seeing them in trophy action. And across the league, it's just feeling less and less likely that someone can catch them up at this point and take championship action from them. Just quickly, their opponents, Sheffield, are on a real slide right now. And I think the key thing they're missing is just consistency. Some nights they're flowing, but most nights it's a struggle. In the game against London on Sunday, in the first half, everyone was hitting their shots and hitting from 3. However, because all their shots were going in the first half, in the third quarter, they 100% settled for jump shots. And there was nobody that was willing to kind of run a set and get some action that was going to the rim. People were just settling way too much, and they didn't consistently know how they wanted to attack the Lions' defence. At this point, I also think William Lee, is just giving you more offensively and defensively for the Sheffield Sharks. I think he needs to start over Jalen Deloach, and I would start, if I was a Tibro Lions, just committing to this small ball lineup and really trying to lean into that identity of William Lee being your small ball 5 and Mervyn James playing full-time at the 4. Next question, do you think that the Newcastle Eagles will bring in any more signings to improve their squad? Newcastle obviously had a tough weekend, losing to both Bristol and then Manchester, and critically, they missed opportunities to build on their lead over Caledonia Gladiators in 9th place. One thing that I am surprised with the Newcastle Eagles is the rotations that head coach Mark Stoutel is running. They have a lot more healthy and fit players than they did 6 weeks ago, and I think in some ways that's exasperated the rotation issues. When I look at the squad, the only people that I would potentially look to change, is probably just Mitch Clark, if I'm honest. But he's classed as a British player anyway. So, you're not opening up an import spot, swapping him out. The other thing you do objectively, I suppose, is potentially choose to give the minutes to Emmanuel Canway over Darius Defoe. But that's a very difficult decision given Darius's legacy with the club and just what he means to the Newcastle Eagles faithful. I don't look at the imports as being the issue for this team. Mark has been really vocal about trying to give his team freedom on offence and the fact that they're taking bad shots. Well, I think it's time to rein them in then. It's time to run more of your sets. It's time to tighten the rotation, even if that means egos are going to be bruised. That's why Newcastle was so successful at the end of last season particularly, because when they had those injuries, they had to just trust the guys that knew what they were going to do. They ran a tight rotation and it worked for them. I think they just have to kind of lean into that a little bit more. The only other potential import I could see being swapped out is Okafor, and that's mainly just down to health and consistency. I think when he's healthy and he's operating well, he's an absolutely dynamic weapon for this Eagles offence. He can shoot the ball, he can defend multiple positions, he's big, he's strong, he's a body in the lane. So a healthy Gus Okafor to me is a real weapon. The Newcastle Eagles are better than what their record is showing. And actually, the fact that they've already reached the trophy finals, I think it's shown that this season has been quite successful for them. And, barring something going majorly wrong, they're pretty much guaranteed a spot in the playoffs already. Okay, final question. Why don't you focus more on the women's game? There's some incredible basketball being played. Do you know what? That's a really fair comment. We've talked in passing about the women's game, and we also did an in-depth part around the SLBW Trophy Finals. But it doesn't always feature in our content, and we need to do better. Because honestly, I do rate the players in the SLBW. And honestly, time's a barrier, but that's not a quality reason to not give the airtime to the great stuff that's happening in the W. However, we've got some exciting plans to try and fix some of that, and it will likely launch in Feb. So watch this space and make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to stay locked in to our British basketball content and what's going to happen in the women's game. Some quick shout outs though. Tobias Cameron already got his landing spot for next season. He signed with the Sheffield Sharks of the New Zealand Basketball League. Interestingly, their season starts on the 10th of April. The SLB could potentially go all the way through to May 17th, although Cheshire's regular season finished on the 26th of April. So they've already said that Cameron won't join the team until the season is finished. And I'm assuming he's staying for the playoffs, but never say never. Also, a huge shout out to Timothy Nwanko getting the start against Sheffield and throwing down one of the Dunk of the Year contenders. He played really, really well in this game, just from an overall perspective, and gave an amazing account of himself, his skill sets, and what he can become in the future. And quickly, big shout out to whoever's taken over the Surrey 89ers socials. They're absolutely crushing it. More to come this week as we're going to drop our SLB Cup preview. We're also going to drop a fun bonus episode featuring some of our British basketball players. Catch you in the next one, guys.